What's up guys, my name's Luke and welcome back to Motion and Design. So I've been trying to improve my lighting skills recently. I've noticed that the lighting in a lot of my scenes are kind of standard and I wanted to improve them. So I was challenged by a friend of mine to try and recreate one of the Man vs. Machines Volvo car shots. So this is the shots that we're trying to recreate today. So this is mainly going to be just educational purposes to try learn a bit of how they got a similar result to this. Car renders can be quite difficult, and so yeah, I thought I would show you guys what I learned from doing this project. So yeah, if you guys like this sort of content, please consider liking and subscribing, and if you want to support the channel, I have a Patreon in the bio. So yeah, you can support me there. I have a bunch of project files and some tutorials on there. But yeah, let's get straight into this tutorial. So before we start with this actual tutorial, I want to go and create some lights. So let's just create a normal square over here and let's create some gradients. So if you don't have Photoshop, I'm sure you can just download some gradients like these. These are going to be really simple, but you'll see why we need them in a bit. So we're going to create 3. So let's create one that is just a gradient like this. We also want a spherical gradients like that, and then lastly just a normal linear gradients. Cool, so once we have those 3, we can actually get started on this. So I have a really basic scene over here. This is just a Audi that was bought. It is just on a plane in the middle of an abyss, and this is going to be our starting point. If you don't have a car, you can just search for car over here, and Cinema 4D does have 4 cars. I'd say that this, I think it's this red one up here, is a pretty similar car to this one. So if you want to follow along, I'd recommend just downloading this one and putting it over here, and then you should be able to follow along with this tutorial. But if not, I hope you at least learn a little bit. Cool. So let's get started over here. So one of the main things you'll notice with this is the main source of lighting in the scene is this big screen over here. So let's set that up first. So let's go and create a plane. Put that to 90 degrees. And let's bring that off to the side over here. Let's just make it wider and bigger. Cool, so let's go and create a material and put, actually, hold on. Let me just change back to the normal nodes and now create a material. Cool, so let's grab a ramp over here. And let's just first bump it into the cutter so we can see what we're doing. On this side, let's go and select our cutters over here. So let's press I, select this far right, and copy this. If you're using aces, don't forget to change this to display so that we actually get the correct value over here. And let's drag this to the side, and then let's select the color in the middle over here. And copy that. And paste that over there. Cool, so it looks like we might need to just change this to horizontal. And let's plug this into our emission channel. So emission and color. So we can go over here and just we can turn up the roughness all the way. We don't really need the reflections. Let's bump this up to 2. Something like that should be perfect. Let's throw in a dome light over here and bring that intensity all the way down. And now we have a really nice looking render, and it is very similar to this, although the colors are a bit off. I think that might be the aces. So let's just go and check. Or it could be our brightness. Let's change this to 1. Okay, so that should be fun for now. This is a good starting point. So let's just move our plane a little bit. Looking over here, we want to kind of create this nice line over here that kind of shows the shape of the car. So let's just bring this a little bit to the side and I think something like that is perfect. Obviously, we want to be able to get the exact same shape over here as it is different shapes of the cars. Cool, so let's do our first key light over here, which is going to be this light over here that's coming in from the side. Let's go and grab a area light, and under the texture, we're going to load one of our gradients that we created. So I'm going to use a spherical gradient, but you can also use a linear gradient. Just see whichever looks better for you, but I think I'm going to use a spherical gradient over here. Let's put that up, and let's lock our camera over here so we can actually leave our camera. And let's rotate our lights. And now we have this really nice gradient over here. So the main reason we're going to be using gradients is if I had to remove this texture, so let me just delete that over there, you'll see what happens is that we get these really hard outlines. And this really does not look nice. Any sort of reflective surface that you're trying to light, you'll always get these hard lights if you are just using a basic area light. So an easy way around that is to create these simple gradients. You can also, Grayscale Gorilla also has a bunch of gobos that you could use and just like light textures that you can get more realistic results. But I really like just these simple, plain gradients. It's something that anyone can use and looks really nice. So let's go into our color over here and let's select something like that. Let's just bring down white a bit. Looking at a reference over here, it is a similar color to this, but a little bit more white. So I think something like that should be perfect. Cool, so the next light that I think we should focus on is this nice big one over here that's lighting up our Volvo. So looking at this, it looks like we have two separate lights, or maybe it's just one. We have one that's probably going to be a light that's over here. And then we also have a light that's focusing in on our logo over here. So let's go and create that. Let's go redshifts, area lights, and let's load in our texture. So I'm going to use the spherical gradient again, just because looking at what we're trying to light, we need this all to be in light. Cool, let's rotate this. Let's also make it smaller, and let's put it at a little bit of an angle. And let's bring down this by a height a bit. So we want the light to wrap around all of this. Looking at this, it looks like this main light is only focusing over here, and then we actually look at this, it looks like we have one light that focuses up here, and then we have another light that's coming in from the right hand side over here. So let's do that. Let's make this light a little bit smaller, bring that to the top over here. Let's make it a little bit wider, and just bring down our intensity by a bit. Cool, I think that looks nice. I just think that we just need to bring this over a little bit. Maybe something like that. Something like that should be fine. And then while we're here, let's also create a light that lights up our logo over here, because at the moment it's not very lit. Cool, so let's just duplicate our light. And let's make this a lot smaller. Cool, so inside of our light, let's go to project and let's change this from exclude to include. And let's select our logo over here. So now we're telling Redshift to only light that specific object. Let's also go into our object over here. Let's add a target tag and set this as our target. Let's see what that looks like. Cool, so now with the lights, we have this a lot more bright over here. I think that highlights it enough. I think we might be able to just get a little bit more if we just increase the size of this, but I think that's looking quite nice over there. Cool, so we've got the top over here. Let's light over here. So let's take our other light over here. Let's just duplicate it and let's bring it down. So looking at our reference over here, it is lighting this area over here. This area over here looks like it's lit by another light, so we're going to leave that for now, but we're only going to focus on this specific area. I think for this light, we can change from our gradients to a linear two-way light, so we can get a longer streak over here. Looking at this, it might be oriented the wrong way, so let's just see. It's oriented the correct way. And now we have this really nice light over here. I think I want to bring down the light a little bit so that it's only a little bit subtle, just so that we kind of focus the eye over here. Cool, so now that we've done that, let's go and light this side of the car. Let's add in another light. Actually, for now, let's just copy this light, seeing as though it's going to be a similar color to that light, and let's bring that down. I think we can make this quite a bit smaller. And let's bring this over here, and let's angle it like that. Let's just make sure to look at our reference over here. So looking at our reference, we don't have any harsh light over here. If you look at it, it's very diffused. So we can bring this light down by quite a significant amount. So let's go into our light. Let's bring this down by quite a bit. I think something like that looks fine for now. So we also want to make sure that we're seeing little things like this when looking at car renders and any sort of product renders. If there are specific highlights that need to be shown, such as this Volvo over here and the type of car, we need to make sure that we can see it. Because right now, if we had to look at this, you can't see this over here. So let's go in and create another light that's just going to be focusing in on our car type. So we're going to do again what we did with the Volvo. We're going to go into our light over here and change this to include, and to only include our text over here. So look at that. Now we're highlighting just that. But this is very strong, so let's bring this down by quite a bit. I think something like that. We don't want it to be too bright where it's too much, but we want it that you can still see it in the render. I think something like that is fine for now, but looking over here, I think we need to increase our light. Just by a bit. Let me also just try a different gradient over here. See if that helps. I think that might be a better gradient to use, is this linear one, because then we get a nicer fall off. Cool, so I think that looks quite nice. We have it where it is highlighting the specific area over here, over there, and also we're having it where it's properly lit over here. So looking at that, we don't want that. We don't want these little imperfections. So let's figure out what is causing that. I think it might be this main light over here. If we had to turn that off, it's not that. Is it our plane? It is our plane. So let's just move that over a little bit. Great, I think that looks better. So now we have this part highlighted and we don't have any of those imperfections going on, but we still have it where it really nicely wraps around here. So looking over here, we don't have a light that's highlighting over here. So I think that is our key light over here. If we had to turn this off. Yeah. Cool, so we can easily fix that by just going into our light over here, going into exclude and just excluding our top surface over here. Let's also exclude our antenna and the base over here. So that now it's a little bit dark over here so that our eyes focus in over here. Cool, let's go back to our reference. So looking at our reference over here, the lights on the wheels are very nicely lit compared to here where these aren't nicely lit at all. So let's go in and add individual lights for each one of these tires. So here I want to change it to this gradient and we want to change the color to something like this. So looking over here, there's no bright highlights in the wheels. It is actually quite diffuse lighting. So let's make sure that we don't have any of these bright highlights over here. So I think if we just bring down our intensity by a bit, we should fix that. I think something like that looks nice. But what we're doing over here is that now we're shining light over here and we don't want that. So let's go into our light over here, go into exclude and make sure we exclude these pieces over here so that we're only shining over here. Cool, so you'll notice that on the wheels over here, we also have these really nice little highlights on the rim of it compared to here where it's actually quite dark. So let's go in and add some more lights. So let's duplicate our light over here, make it quite small. And now look at that. We have this really nice lit tire over here. Although it does look like we can increase the intensity over here a bit, just so that we actually get a little bit of a highlight over there. Let's copy this light and do the same thing for our front tire. We're also shining light here and we don't want that, so we can do the same thing. I'm going over here and making sure we exclude these. And now we have better render over here. Core. Nice, so you'll notice over here, we still have it where it is pitch black, just like we have it over here where it is pitch black. Cool, so the next bit of lighting I think we should focus on is the wheels over here. Because at the moment, this wheel is nicely highlighted, kind of like that, although it's only on the rim. We want to highlight a little bit of the actual tire itself. So let's take this light over here, seeing as though we're going to be using the same color, and let's drag it down here. Cool, so looking at the reference over here, we want it to be quite subtle. Something like that, and then let's just bring down our intensity. And now we have this really nice little highlight over here, just like this, although actually this is a lot darker. So let's make this a little bit darker. Let's bring down our exposure by a bit. I think something like that is perfect. Let's duplicate the slide again and bring it all the way down over here. Cool. So we wanted to just highlight the bottom of the tire. So let's go and let's just increase our exposure by a bit. And let's maybe just bring this back a little bit. I think something like that is working. The only thing that we don't want is we don't want it to be shining on the floor over here. We'll do a separate light path just for that. So with our lights in the exclude, let's exclude the floor. Nice. So now we have lights that are lighting up each one of the tires. I think this could be a little bit brighter. I think something like that is perfect. Now let's go and make sure that we have this highlight over here. So I'm not talking about the highlight on the actual ground. I think that's separate. We want this highlight just to highlight the edge of the tire over here. You'll notice that it's really subtle, but it's enough to make it that the difference between the tire and the black over here is enough compared to our render over here, where if you had to look over here, is this the doodle pen? Okay, well, if you had to look over there, there is no difference between the black of the tire and the black of the floor over here. Cool, so looking over here, it looks like we're using a lighter color. Not white, but a little bit lighter than the color that we have over here. So let's duplicate this, bring this forward, and let's make this a little bit whiter. Something like that. So for this light, let's use our other gradient, which is going to be this one over here. Let's just rotate it to make sure that we're using the right shape. We're not, so let's bring it down like this and rotate it. Cool, and now we can hide our light again. Cool, so we only want it to be affecting the rim over here. Looking at this, it's really only over here. It is extremely subtle. I think something like that is perfect. Cool, so looking at that, it looks like we have a lot of the main lights of the car done. The only thing it looks like that I've got a little bit wrong is this light over here. I would highly recommend that if you guys actually label your lights when doing something like this to make this a little bit easier, but for the sake of this tutorial, I didn't do that. So let's just bring this over by a bit. I also make it a little bit smaller and a little bit wider. Because we're using redshift, by changing the scale of the lights, the shape of the light over here, it'll change their intensity. So if you're doing small adjustments like this, don't forget to change the intensity. Let's bring that down by a bit. I think that's a little bit better. Cool, so now what we want to do is light the floor over here. So it's going to be this light over here. Let's go in and create a new light, an area light. Bring this to the side over here. And for this one, we are going to change the color to something kind of reddish. So let's go and select our color over here. Let's look at the color. It is kind of like this color, but it is a little bit reddish. This could be due to the floor, the actual texture on the floor over here. But I think we can get away with just making it a little bit redder and then bringing down the intensity by quite a bit. So looking at how this light is going, it's kind of going at an angle where it's drifting off to the side over here, but then still leaving pitch black over here. So let's try mimic that. I'm going to add a gradient over here so that we don't get this really harsh line over here. Looking at our reference over here, we have a lot more of a softer line over there. We want to make sure that this light is also casting this little bit of light over here. Picture of this thing is huge, and just bring down the size of that. Cool, so we want it that it lights up this part. I think something like that is perfect. Let's just also duplicate this light and bring it a little bit more forward. Found out. So what I'm aiming to do over here is just get this little bit of lighting over there. That's just really subtly going in the front over there. But what that's doing is that it's breaking up the difference over here between the black and the tires, so that you're able to actually see these two tires over here. I think something like that is fine for now. So the light isn't casting all the way over here. We can either create another light or just kind of mess around a little bit more with this light. Actually, we are getting a little bit of light, but cool. I think that looks much better. Cool, so our lights over here are not looking nice at all because they're lighting our car over here. So let's go into our project and make sure that the include is only set to the floor. Let's go to this one as well and change that to floor only. Include floor. Cool. So now it's lighting like that. Let's also click this over here so it still affects our shadows, because we still wanted to create this shadow over here. So another very nice thing about this render is this little highlight over here. So let's go and create that. So looking at our light over here in comparison to here, it's a lot more softer. So we can fix that by just throwing a gradient onto it. We're just going to have to bring up the intensity by a bit more and maybe just change the shape of our light by a bit. And looking at our render over here, they look very close, but one thing that I am noticing with our render in comparison to theirs is that the wheel over here is just lit a little bit more. So let's go and just create another light over there. We have one light that's lighting up our wheel over here. Let's duplicate that and let's just drag that across so that we're affecting this front wheel. I think something like that is nice, but we're getting these really ugly reflections over here. So let's go into our exclude over here and just make sure we exclude all of these. You can obviously do the inverse and only include the rims, but I was just doing the exclude, seeing as though there was more things I wanted to affect. And look at that, I feel like we have a pretty similar results. There are a few things that I think could be a little bit better, like this over here. Let's make it that it actually matches the color a little bit more. And let's also just make it be a bit wider so it has a larger area. I think that looks quite nice. The only thing I'm not completely happy with is this area over here. I think it's a little bit too bright. If you had to look over here, it is brighter, but it's not that bright. So let's go and change that. So that's going to be this light over here. Let's just also center it a little bit more and bring down our intensity by a bit. I also think that our logo is a little bit too bright, so let's just bring this down by a bit. Nice. The only thing that we're missing out on looking at this render in comparison to our render is that we are completely losing our bumper over here. Compared to this, where we have this light over here that's highlighting our bumper. It's very subtle, but it's enough that you can see it. Compared to ours over here, where you completely lose it. So let's go and add in another light. And now we have it that it's subtly light over here. The only other thing I want to add is just a little bit of a light over here, seeing as though we're losing this part. If you had to look over here, our tire and our bumper are one at the moment, and we want to have a light that at least separates the two of them. I think something like that is perfect. It makes it that we can at least see there's a difference between our tire and our bumper. Nice. So looking at our reference and looking at our render, I feel like we got a really similar result. Obviously, it's not exactly the same as Man vs. Machines. They are obviously better lighting artists than I am. But yeah, I feel like I was able to get pretty close, and I learned a lot doing this project. So yeah, I hope you guys learned a lot too. This is a little bit different to the normal content that I make, but I learned a lot for this project, so I just really thought I would share it with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, if you want to see more of this content, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you're interested in project files, please consider supporting me on Patreon. But yeah, that's all for this week, and I hope to see you guys next week. Peace.